Arlen Drake preferred the smell of ozone and hot wiring to the perfumed air of the diplomatic corps. He kept his head down, a civilian network technician on the Halcyon Spindle, the orbital capital that gleamed like a jeweler's challenge against the black. The Spindle was the heart of the coalition, a place of high-stakes interspecies trade and brittle treaties. Arlen wanted no part of it. He just wanted to diagnostics, splice fiber, and collect his pay. His anonymity was a fortress he had spent 10 years building, brick by painful brick. His apartment in the civilian sector, 7 residential ring, was his sanctuary. It was small, cluttered with diagnostic tools and obsolete data drives. But it had a viewport that looked out onto the Spindle's inner curve. He could see the transit rings humming with activity and, far below, the shimmer of the shielded diplomatic sectors he so carefully avoided. He was splicing a rogue data stream from his console, a cup of synthetic coffee cooling beside him, when his door chime announced the end of his quiet life. He sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. He was not expecting anyone. He keyed the door open. Standing in the corridor were 2 women and a floating, officious administrator droid that immediately projected a holographic seal of the interspecies integration program. "Arlen Drake," the droid chirped, its voice synthesized to be painfully cheerful. "Congratulations, you have been selected for the Cohabitation Accord Initiative. Your new roommates are here." Arlen stared. He had not applied for any roommates. He certainly had not applied for these 2. The woman on the left, Nixara Velith, was E3. She was tall and slender, her skin a pale, bioluminescent blue that seemed to shift with the corridor lighting. Her features were fine, her eyes a deep, solid violet, and she carried herself with the unnerving stillness of a diplomat. She wore the formal robes of her delegation, and Arlen could feel a faint, cool pressure against his temples, a signature of the E3's latent bioempathic field. She offered him a short, practiced bow. The woman on the right, Sable Cade, could not have been more different. She was human, or at least she had been, once. Her hair was cropped short, and her eyes were a flat, analytical gray. One of them, Arlen noted, was a complex optical replacement that whirred almost silently as it scanned him. The aperture contracting, polished metal traced the line of her jaw and disappeared beneath the high collar of her severe, dark uniform. She was augmented, heavily, and she stood with a rigid posture that screamed military. She did not bow. She just watched. "There is a mistake," Arlen said, his voice flat. He tried to close the door. The droid zipped forward, blocking it with its chassis. "No mistake, Citizen Drake. This is a mandatory assignment to foster interspecies cooperation in accordance with Directive 301. Nixara Velith, representing the E3 diplomatic mission, Sable Cade, seconded from Coalition Internal Security. They are your new residential partners." Arlen looked from Nixara's polite, strained smile to Sable's granite expression. "I am a network repairman. I do not need to foster interspecies cooperation. I need sleep. And this apartment has 1 bedroom." "An excellent point," the droid chirped, unfazed. It projected a datapad image between them. "Which brings us to the logistical paperwork. The Coalition Housing Authority has received your mission brief and has categorized your residence accordingly. We have taken the liberty of redesignating your apartment's primary sleep chamber to accommodate the unique status of your new household." Arlen squinted at the projected document. He read the designation line. He read it again. "Residential status, spouse, 3 counts." A thick silence descended on the corridor. Arlen looked at Nixara. The E3 woman's pale blue skin had flushed a remarkable shade of lavender. "Oh," she breathed, her voice a low murmur. Sable Cade's augmented eye simply clicked. "That categorization is inefficient," she stated. Her voice was a low contralto, scraped clean of inflection. The probability of a successful tripartite romantic pairing between us is statistically negligible. Furthermore, I am assigned here for security observation. Be that as it may, operative, the droid said, its cheerful tone unwavering. The assignment is filed. The residency rules for the spindle are quite clear. Marital partners are assigned a single primary chamber to maximize residential density. We cannot authorize allocation for 2 additional private rooms when your household is officially documented as, well, as a marriage. Arlen ran a hand over his face. I am not married, he said, enunciating every word. I am not married to the diplomat. I am not married to the operative. We are not married to each other. This is a clerical error. A clerical error you must take up with coalition records, the droid said brightly. That process typically takes 3 to 5 standard business cycles. Until then, Regulation 301 requires that you share the designated marital chamber. It is for integration. You see now. If you will kindly allow your partner's entry, I must update the building census. Arlen was trapped. Denying entry to government-assigned personnel, especially a security operative, was a fast way to lose his apartment and his anonymity. He stared at the droid, then at his new wives. Fine, Arlen growled, stepping back. You can stay. But the droid is wrong. We are not sharing the bedroom. The operative can have the couch. The diplomat can have the floor. I am keeping my bed. That is unacceptable, Sable said, stepping inside. Her boots made a heavy, measured sound on his floor. She scanned the room, her gaze lingering on his diagnostic console. The couch offers no tactical viability and has suboptimal spinal support. Nixara glided in after her, wincing at the mess. And I cannot. I am E3. My sleep cycle requires bioempathetic resonance with the local field. The floor is problematic. Arlen shut the door, cutting off the droid's cheerful, have a productive cohabitation. He turned to face them, the small apartment suddenly feeling like a compression chamber. Look, Arlen said, forcing his voice into a calm he did not feel. I do not know what game the coalition is playing, and I do not care. I am a nobody. I fix broken networks. You are in my home. We are not spouses. We are a temporary, and deeply unfortunate, alliance against bureaucracy. Let us just stay out of each other's way until this is fixed. A temporary alliance, Sable repeated, testing the words. She seemed to find them acceptable. Understood. I will require access to your apartment's main sink core. Why? Arlen asked, suddenly wary. To establish a secure monitoring perimeter and link my internal systems to the local security grid, she said, as if it were obvious. You will do no such thing, Arlen snapped. That is my private console. It is off limits. Both of you. Off limits. Before Sable could retort, Nixara held up a slender hand. Please. He is right. This is an embarrassing logistical error. Perhaps we should focus on the immediate. Arlen, your apartment's energy field is strange. Arlen froze. It is standard civilian-grade power. Nothing strange about it. Nixara tilted her head, her violet eyes focused on something past him, something in the walls. No, it feels compressed, like a signal waiting to be sent. The Accord lattice. It is very strong here. Arlen felt a prickle of cold sweat on his neck. The Accord lattice was the ancient, semi-sentient network that underpinned all coalition technology. It was more than fiber optics and data streams. It was a mesh of psionic and technological pathways laid down by a long-dead race. It connected everything, and to most people, it was just background noise, like the hum of the station's life support. To Arlen, it was the thing he had to fight every day to ignore. It is just the central conduit running beneath this sector, he lied, turning away to hide his sudden tension. Lots of signal traffic. He busied himself at his console, trying to restore his sense of normalcy. He needed to check the grid. He needed to work. He opened his diagnostic panel and placed his hand on the apartment's sink core, a palm-sized disk of cool, dark crystal. It was a routine gesture, something he did 20 times a day. This time, it was different. The moment his skin touched the crystal, it did not just read the data. It sang. A low, subsonic vibration filled the room, rattling the coffee cup against the desk. A wave of shimmering, turquoise light pulsed from the core, traveling up Arlen's arm and washing over his face. The walls of the apartment lit up for a fraction of a second, revealing the intricate, glowing pathways of the lattice embedded within the metal. The air crackled. Arlen snatched his hand back as if burned, his heart hammering. Nixara gasped, her hand flying to her chest. The bioempathic pressure in Arlen's skull intensified. "That resonance," she whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. It answered you." Sable K did not gasp. Her augmented eye whirred, the lens focusing tightly on Arlen. "Energy discharge detected," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Unidentified signature. Origin Citizen Drake. That function is not standard for a civilian repairman." "It was a power surge," Arlen said, his voice hoarse. "Faulty grounding, I fix it." "No," Nixara said, taking a step toward him. "That was not a surge. That was harmony. That feeling. It is what the texts describe. Only a keeper can resonance with the lattice like that. But the keepers are extinct. They died in the fire scourge." "I am a repairman," Arlen insisted, backing away. Before the argument could escalate, the apartment's main console chimed, overriding their conversation with a priority news broadcast. The image of a coalition broadcaster filled the screen, her face grim. "We interrupt this broadcast with developing news from the Epsilon Rim," the broadcaster announced. "Approximately 1 hour ago, the mining settlement on asteroid JM44 was completely destroyed." The screen switched to horrifying external footage. A small, self-contained habitat, moments before a thriving community, was now a silent, charred husk. But it had not exploded. It had been incinerated. The weapon's effect was precise, leaving the surrounding rock untouched, but melting the habitat itself into slag. "Responsibility has been claimed by the xenophobic organization known as the Directorate of Purity," the broadcaster continued. In a statement, their leader, Warden Malachar, claimed the settlement was, quote, "a purification by righteous fire, removing a nest of alien sympathizers." Arlen was not listening to the words. He was staring at the way the metal had cooled, the specific pattern of the disintegration. He saw the way the fire had burned, hot enough to vaporize infrastructure but selective enough to leave the rock around it cold. He was suddenly not on the halcyon spindle. He was a child again, hidden in a ventilation shaft, the smell of burning circuits and cooked flesh filling his lungs. He was watching men in white armor use the same impossible fire on his home, listening to the screams of his family. He remembered the sound his younger sister made. "Arlen." He blinked. Nixara was watching him, her face pale, the empathy rolling off her in waves of concern. "You are... I can feel it. Such grief. Such... rage." "I know that weapon," Arlen said, his voice barely a whisper. He touched the screen, his finger tracing the melted slag. "They used it on my family. They said it was a reactor accident. They lied." "The Directorate," Sable said, her voice hard. "They are terrorists. They believe in human supremacy, untainted by augmentation or alien biology." She looked pointedly from her own metal-laced jaw to Nixara's blue skin. They despise everything in this room. Arlen's hands were shaking. The grief was a familiar, cold stone in his gut. But the rage was new. It was hot. He had spent a decade burying the keeper in him, the part of his biology that could feel the lattice. He had hidden from the coalition, from the diplomats, from everyone, terrified they would see what he was. Now, he did not care. He turned back to his console. The news broadcast was still playing, but Arlen ignored it. He needed to know more. He needed to see what they had done. He slammed his palm back onto the sink core. This time, he did not just touch it. He pushed. The reaction was immediate and violent. It was not a gentle pulse. It was a detonation of pure information. The lights in his apartment did not just flicker. They exploded in a shower of sparks. The console screen went black. A shockwave of pure, turquoise energy blasted outward from Arlen, slamming both Nixara and Sable against the far wall. The building's power grid did not just fluctuate, it flatlined. For 3 blocks in every direction, every light, every console, every security door on residential Sector 7 went dead. The Accord lattice, the ancient network sleeping in the walls, awoke. It recognized the touch of its master. It sang Arlen's rage into the void. In the sudden, oppressive silence of the dead apartment, the only sounds were the panicked shouts from the corridor and the heavy, pounding footsteps growing closer. "What did you do?" Nixara gasped, pulling herself up from the floor. "Unauthorized energy discharge registered," Sable bit out, her systems clearly struggling to reboot. Her gray human eye was wide, but her augmented one was glowing a dull, threatening red. "Sector-wide power failure." That was not a faulty grounding. Drake. A massive fist hammered on the apartment door. "Security, open this door. We have a Class 1 energy anomaly. Open now, or we breach." Nixara scrambled to her feet, her diplomatic calm shattered. She rounded on Arlen, her violet eyes blazing. "They are coming. They cannot find you, my mission. It was not just integration. My delegation sent me because our empaths felt a potential. A whisper of a keeper returning. We need you. We need a keeper to initiate a symbiotic pairing. To open the reconciliation gate and stop the resource wars." Arlen stared at her, the blood draining from his face. "The gate." "My orders just updated," Sablecade interrupted, her voice a terrifying monotone. Her weapon, a sleek, integrated pulse pistol, snapped from a housing in her thigh into her hand. She aimed it squarely at Arlen's chest. "Subject Arlen Drake. Status confirmed anomalous energy signature. Classification keeper, fugitive. Directive detain. Immediately. For unauthorized and catastrophic manipulation of the Accord lattice." The pounding on the door became the shriek of a plasma cutter. They had seconds. Arlen looked at the E3 diplomat, who wanted to use him as a key, and the coalition cyborg who wanted to put him in chains. And outside the melting door, the suppression squad waited to put him in a grave. His entire life. He had run. He had hidden. He had pretended to be a repairman. He was done running. "Detain me," Arlen said to Sable, a humorless smile twisting his lips. "You will have to find me first." He raised his hand, not toward Sable, but toward the wall where the main power conduit ran. He did not touch it. He just willed it. The suppression squad burst through the door, plasma smoke and molten metal spraying into the room. They were encased in heavy black armor, their faceplates dark, shield emitters already flaring. "Freeze on your knees, hands." The command died in a gasp. Every system in their armor went dead. Their shields vanished. Their weapon sights went dark. The red ready lights on their pulse rifles winked out. Even their internal comms cut to static. They were just men trapped in 300 pounds of inert metal. Sablecade's arm, the one holding the pistol, suddenly locked up, the joints freezing. Her red optic fizzled and went dark. She stared at Arlen, her human eye wide with shock. He had not attacked her. He had simply turned her off. "I am not a key, Nixara," Arlen said, his voice low and vibrating with the energy still thrumming in his veins. "And I am not a prisoner, Sable." He walked past the frozen suppression squad, past the stunned cyborg, and grabbed Nixara by the arm. "We are leaving. Now." "Where are we going?" Nixara cried, stumbling after him as he plunged into the dark corridor. "Somewhere my spouses cannot find me," Arlen shot back. He looked back once. Sable Cade was already forcing her frozen arm to move, fighting his control with her own augmented will. She was strong, but she was not a keeper. She broke free of the lock just in time to see Arlen Drake, the quiet repairman, and Nixara Velith, the panicked diplomat, disappear into a service duct, leaving her alone in a dark apartment full of deactivated soldiers. The most unstable, ill-matched, and illegally documented alliance on the Halcyon Spindle had just begun. The service duct was a cramped, dark throat of metal that smelled of ionized dust and stale coolant. Arlen dragged Nixara along, his grip tight on her arm. His other hand was pressed flat against the conduit-laced wall, and the station's blueprints were unfolding in his mind like a burning map. He was not just running. He was feeling his way through the Accord lattice, sensing the junctions, the power relays, the security patrols converging on the sector he had just blacked out. "Slow down," Nixara panted, her fine diplomatic robes catching on a protruding strut. She stumbled, her bioempathic field broadcasting waves of panic that beat against Arlen's already overstimulated nerves. "Where are we going? You cannot just shut down an entire residential block." "I just did," Arlen said, his voice a low growl. He pulled her into a vertical maintenance shaft and began to climb, his muscles burning. "And those soldiers are rebooting. Sable is rebooting. We have maybe 2 minutes." "You do not understand," she argued, scrambling after him. "My mission was to find you, not to be hunted with you the reconciliation gate." "I am not your gate opener," Arlen snapped, hauling himself onto a new level. It was a dark, wind-swept cross-channel, designed to vent thermal energy into the void. "I am a repairman. Or I was. Now I am the man who just declared war on station security." A heavy, metallic thud echoed from the shaft below them. "Correction," a flat voice said. "We declared war." Arlen spun, pulling Nixara behind him. Sable Cade hauled herself out of the shaft with terrifying, augmented efficiency. Her uniform was scorched, and her red glowing, augmented eye was back online, boring into him. Her pulse pistol was steady in her hand, but it was not aimed at his chest. It was aimed at the corridor junction behind him. "My directive was to detain you," Sable stated, her breath not even misting in the cold air. "That directive is now secondary to mission survival. The suppression squad logged me as a co-conspirator in the anomaly. My command codes are locked. You, repairman, have made me a fugitive." Arlen stared at her, his mind racing. "So you are not going to shoot me. Detaining you now serves no logical purpose. You are the anomaly. The energy signature you released has patterns. It is not chaos. It is a signal, and it is still leaking." Sable tilted her head. "I am tracking it. You are tracking it too. Are you not with your internal function?" Arlen realized she was right. Part of his awareness was fixed on a resonance, a humming echo of the power he had unleashed. It was pulling him somewhere. "What is your point, operative?" "My point is that we are all targets," Sable said. "The Directorate wants the diplomat and the unpure augmented human dead. Coalition security wants you, the walking weapon, contained. Our survival probabilities as individuals are approximately 9%. Together, they are slightly higher." "A temporary alliance," Arlen said. the words tasting like ash. A tactical necessity, Sable corrected. Now, where does this energy trail lead? Arlen looked at Nixara. The E3 woman had composed herself, her diplomatic training kicking in. She closed her eyes, and the empathic pressure in Arlen's head sharpened. It is a harmonic, Nixara whispered, her hand finding the wall, mirroring Arlen's. It is an E3 signature, faint, ancient. It is leading us to the archives, the Dikao Hoazyu, the harmonic archive. I thought it was just a legend. It is not a legend, Arlen said, the knowledge surfacing in him, unbidden, from the lattice itself. It is 3 levels down, Sector 9, hidden behind a defunct hydroprocessing plant. Sable's pistol snapped up, covering their retreat. Lead the way, Keeper. The journey through the Spindle's guts was a tense blur. They avoided main thoroughfares, sticking to maintenance tunnels and cargo haulers. Arlen's ability was a living compass, not only guiding them toward the harmonic echo, but also away from the security patrols. He would feel the thrum of their active comms in the lattice and steer the trio down a different path. Nixara, in turn, acted as a barometer for his power, sensing when his frustration and rage threatened to spike, placing a calming hand on his shoulder. Breathe, Arlen. The lattice feels what you feel. Control it, or it controls you. Sable remained a silent, lethal guardian at their rear. She moved with a purpose that was both terrifying and comforting. She was a weapon, but for now, she was their weapon. They finally reached the decommissioned processing plant. It was a vast, damp cavern of rust and silence. The signature is here, Nixara said, but there is nothing. Arlen walked past her, his gaze fixed on a blank wall of pitted steel. You are wrong. It is right here. He reached out and pressed his palm against the cold metal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, he closed his eyes and called. The energy that left him was not a blast. It was a key. A single, pure note of turquoise light pulsed from his hand. The note traveled across the wall, Ignean intricate, geometric patterns that had been invisible moments before. The wall hummed, the vibration rising in pitch until it sang. With a sound like 1,000 crystal chimes, the wall dissolved. It did not retract or open. It broke apart into a cloud of shimmering data motes, revealing a cavern beyond. The harmonic archive was not a library of books. It was a living forest of crystalline trees. Each tree pulsed with a soft, internal light, and the air was thick with the sound of whispered information. It was an E3 living database, a place designed to store racial memory. By the stars, Nixara breathed, stepping inside. She looked at Arlen, her violet eyes filled with an awe that made him deeply uncomfortable. It has not let anyone enter in 500 years, not since the last keeper died. It is just a databank, Arlen said, walking past her, his hand brushing a low-hanging crystal branch. A jolt shot up his arm. He saw it, a flash of memory, not his own. He saw the spindle being built, not with welders, but with will. He saw keepers, his ancestors, shaping the lattice, weaving reality and technology together. He stumbled back, his head pounding. What is this place? It is our history, Nixara said, her voice soft. And our hope. She walked to the center of the cavern, where a single, massive crystal pulsed with a steady, white light. And it is the reason I was sent here. Arlen. The real reason. Sable had taken up a defensive position by the shimmering, open doorway, her pistol sweeping the dark corridor outside. Elucidate, diplomat. Your mission parameters have changed. Nixara took a deep breath. The coalition is failing. The resource wars on the outer colonies are about to consume us all. The Directorate of Purity is just a symptom of a deeper sickness. The only thing that can stop it is a new accord, a new treaty binding all the species. But that treaty cannot be signed on paper. It must be sealed. Sealed how? Arlen asked, his suspicion returning. With the Accord Gate, Nixara said. It is not a physical door. It is a conduit, a part of the lattice that can broadcast a field of trust and reconciliation across the entire network, forcing all parties into a state of empathic honesty. It would end the wars in a day. It would neutralize the hate code of the Directorate. Then open it, Arlen said. Nixara looked at him, and for the first time, he saw not a diplomat, but a desperate woman. I cannot. The E3 cannot. No one can, alone. The archive just confirmed it. She gestured to the central crystal, which was now projecting faint, shimmering E3 script into the air. The gate was not built to be opened by a single person. The old texts were specific. The ceremony requires a duality of trust, a symbiotic bond between a keeper and his chosen partner. Arlen stared at her. Partner. Not a political partner, Nixara said, her blue skin flushing lavender again. A life partner. A spouse. The word hung in the crystalline air, absurd and terrifying. Arlen laughed. A short, harsh bark. The paperwork, the apartment, the marital chamber. You knew. No, Nixara insisted, her voice rising. I swear I did not. I knew the ceremony required a bond, but the specifics, they are ancient. I thought it was symbolic, but the clerical error was not an error. A low voice finished. Sable Cade stepped away from the door, her augmented eye glowing as it processed data. She had a data jack cable plugged from her forearm into a port on one of the crystal trees. I have been accessing the Coalition civilian records, Sable said. This is not a simple misfile. Your file, Arlen Drake, is a ghost. It has been accessed, deleted, and rewritten 11 times in the last 10 years, all from the same high-security terminal. Your family's death was classified as an industrial accident by a sealed directive. The program that assigned us to your apartment was not the standard interspecies integration program. It was a priority executive order. Who, Arlen demanded. Who did it? The access codes are masked, Sable said. They originate from a level of command so high, it does not even have a public designation. Someone in the Coalition elite knew what you were. They buried you in civilian life. And now, they have just activated you. That spouse document was not a mistake. It was an ignition key. The word ignition hit Arlen like a physical blow. The crystal branch he was leaning against pulsed, and another memory slammed into him. Harder this time. He was not in the archive. He was in a reactor chamber, the air tasting of hot metal. His father was at a console, his face desperate. We cannot contain it. Arla, get the children out. The reactor is unstable. Then, the fire. The white, selective fire that was not from a reactor. The men in white armor. The screams. He saw his sister, Alara. She was small. She was 6 years old. She was holding a doll. One of the white armored men raised his weapon. Arlen cried out, a raw sound of agony, and fell to his knees, clutching his head. Arlen, Nixara rushed to him, her empathic field a wave of cool water against his burning pain. What did you see? It was not a reactor, Arlen gasped, the tears hot on his cheeks. He was shaking, not with fear, but with a volcanic rage. It was them, the Directorate. But they were inside the compound. How my father. He was a keeper, too. He was in charge of the bioreactor. He looked up, his eyes meeting Sable's. The truth settled on him, cold and heavy. They did not just kill my family, he whispered. They hunted them. They hunted us. And someone in the coalition let it happen. Someone deleted the records. He stood up, the pain replaced by a chilling clarity. He was not a repairman hiding from his past. He was the last survivor of a massacre, and the people responsible were still out there. They were hunting aliens on the rim, and they were pulling the strings from the very top of the spindle. Justice, Arlen said. No, not justice. Vengeance. Vengeance is an inefficient motive, Sable stated, unplugging from the wall. It compromises tactical decision-making. It is all I have, Arlen retorted. No, it is not, Nixara said, her voice firm. She stood beside him, her small hand on the central crystal. You have this. You have the gate. You can stop them from doing this to anyone else. But we cannot stay here. The archive is compromised now. They will know we were here. Agreed, Sable said. Security patrols are intensifying their search grid. They are sweeping the decommissioned sectors. We need to disappear. Where? Arlen asked. They control the whole spindle. Not all of it, Sable replied. They control the official levels, the transit rings, the diplomatic sectors, the civilian sectors. But the spindle is old. The levels below. They are not on the official maps. We are going to the Undercity. They fled the archive, the crystal wall sealing behind them with a mournful chime, wiping their presence from its memory. The Undercity was a different world. The polished, sterile corridors of the upper spindle gave way to a sprawling, chaotic metropolis of low-gravity markets, jury-rigged habitats, and dangling power cables. The air was thick with the smell of 100 alien food stalls, and the light was a perpetual twilight, lit by gaudy neon signs. They were walking through a crowded market. Arlen and Nixara, now dressed in drab, functional work suits, Sable had acquired for them. When a public data screen flickered to life, it was not a news broadcast. It was a directorate propaganda feed. The face of Warden Malachar filled the screen. He was a hard, charismatic man, his face scarred, but his eyes burning with zeal. People of the Halcyon Spindle, his voice boomed. Look at your homes. Are they pure, or are they infested? The alien, the augmented. They are a sickness in our halls. They take your jobs. They drain your resources. They compromise your humanity. The screen switched to doctored footage of E3 diplomats, making them look sinister. It showed augmented workers, like Sable, portrayed as mindless, dangerous machines. The Directorate of Purity is not an enemy, Malachar declared. We are the cure. Join us. Point out the unclean. Help us purify the spindle. The message ended with a directorate symbol and a local frequency number. Vile, Nixara whispered, her hand clenched at her side. Efficient propaganda, Sable noted, her augmented eyes scanning the crowd. It targets the economically disadvantaged, offering them a scapegoat. As she spoke, a group of human youths, emboldened by the broadcast, surrounded an elderly E3 merchant. One of them shoved the old man, sending his cart of glittering xenofruits, spilling across the walkway. Go back to your dead planet, Xeno, the leader sneered. Before Arlen could even react, Sablecade moved. She was not a soldier. She was a storm. She disarmed and disabled all 4 youths in less than 3 seconds. A blur of precise, non-lethal strikes. She ended with the leader in a painful arm lock, his face pressed against the floor. His physiology is E3, Sable said to the youth, her voice dangerously calm. They are carbon-based. Like you. His biology poses no threat. Your ignorance, however, is a clear and present danger to social cohesion. She let him go, and the youths scrambled away, terrified. Arlen and Nixara helped the old merchant to his feet. He bowed to them, his violet eyes grateful. You are not from here, but you are friends. The garrison will hear of this. Garrison, Arlen asked. A woman stepped out of the shadows of a nearby alley. She was human, scarred, and heavily armed. Garrison Row. We are the unofficial neighborhood watch, and we despise the directorate. You just made a very public statement. That was either very brave or very stupid. It was necessary, Sable said, stepping forward. The woman looked Sable up and down, her eyes lingering on the exposed augmentations. You are coalition, military. I was, Sable said. I am now. Freelance. The woman laughed. We could use some freelance. Come with me. Anyone who kicks directorate bootlickers is worth a drink. They followed her into a hidden network of tunnels behind the market, arriving at a reinforced bunker, buzzing with activity. This was Garrison Row, the heart of the Undercity resistance. The woman, who introduced herself as Kale, listened to their story, or rather, the heavily edited version Arlen and Nixara provided. They were researchers who had uncovered a directorate plot, and now they were being hunted by compromised coalition forces. That is not news to us, Kale said, leaning back in her chair. The directorate has been getting bolder, but we have new intel. It is why we are on high alert. She activated a holodisplay. It showed the image of Warden Malachar. The warden himself is coming to the Spindle. He is slated to be an observer at the First Accord anniversary celebration in 3 days. But that is a cover. Our contacts say he is not bringing a peace offering. He is bringing a weapon. The fire, Arlen said, his voice flat. The kind they used on the Epsilon Rim. Worse, Kyle said. He is bringing a genocidal code. Something he plans to inject into the main diplomatic channels during the celebration. A virus that will target the life support systems of every non-human habitat on the Spindle. He is planning to purify the capital. Nixara looked horrified. But the diplomatic channels are protected by the highest level firewalls. They are controlled by the core AI of the Spindle, the directive stack. Exactly, Sable said, her augmented eye glowing. She was piecing it together. The directorate cannot bypass the stack, not unless it was already compromised. The threads snapped together in Arlen's mind. The doctored files, the executive order that married them, the genocidal code aimed at the diplomatic channels. It all pointed to the same place. The directive stack, Arlen said. It is the system. It is the core operating system for the entire coalition. It controls policy, security, and diplomacy. And it has been infected, tainted by a xenophobic algorithm. If the stack is compromised, Nixara breathed, then the entire coalition is already in the directorate's hands. They are just waiting to spring the trap. Then we have to stop them, Arlen said. The rage from his memories was still there, but it was colder now, honed to a fine point. He knew who had erased his family. It was not just Malachar. It was the system that allowed Malachar to exist. We have to prove it. Sable nodded, her tactical mind already outlining a plan. A genocidal code of that complexity cannot be hidden. It must be logged and authorized. The stack's core programming would demand a record, even a false one. It would be in the vault of ledgers, Arlen said, the name coming to him from the lattice. The stack's immutable memory core. It records every policy change, every directive. He looked at his two companions, this impossible alliance, the diplomat, the cyborg, and the ghost. I am going into that vault, Arlen declared, his voice ringing with a power he had not known he possessed. I am going to find the proof that the stack is compromised, and I am going to find the name of the traitor who signed the order to massacre my family. The Vault of Ledgers, Kale, the Garrison Row leader, said, her voice rough. She leaned back, her chair groaning in protest. That is not a closet you can just pick the lock on. Keeper. It is the most secure data hub on the Spindle. It is located in the Citadel Array, smack in the middle of the diplomatic sector. You cannot walk in there without the highest clearance. Arlen looked at Nixara. She is the highest clearance. She is E3 Diplomatic Corps. And I am... He gestured to himself, a grimace twisting his mouth. I am her mistake, her paperwork. A slow smile spread across Nixara's face, the first genuine expression Arlen had seen from her. It was sharp and intelligent. The clerical error, Kyle. When is the Accord anniversary celebration? 3 days, Kale said, her eyes narrowing. When Malachar arrives. Exactly, Nixara said, her voice gaining strength. The diplomatic sector will be on high alert, but it will also be open for delegations attending the pre-ceremonial functions. My credentials will get me in. But not him, Kale said, nodding at Arlen. Or her, she indicated Sable. That, Nixara said, is where the bureaucracy becomes our weapon. She looked at Arlen, the awkwardness returning full force. The file designated us as spouses. That status grants me a bonded consort. It is an archaic E3 diplomatic privilege, but the directive stack logged it. It is law. You are my official +1. Arlen felt his stomach clench. You want me to walk into the Citadel, pretending to be your husband. I want you to walk in there using the legal cover the system itself provided us, Nixara corrected him, though her blue skin deepened in color. It is the only way you will get within a kilometer of the vault. It is a viable infiltration strategy, Sable Cade stated, her voice cutting through the tension. She had been observing, her augmented eye processing the variables. The cover is 82% viable. The emotional component is a destabilizing variable, but the access it grants is optimal. I can also enter. A high-level diplomat, especially one with a new consort, would be assigned a security chaperone. Kale snorted. A 3-person infiltration team posing as a bickering married couple and their bodyguard. What could possibly go wrong? I will get you the credentials. Clean uniforms, transit passes. But you are on your own once you cross into the high sector. My people cannot go there. The next 3 days were a blur of strained preparation. Sable drilled them on diplomatic courtesies and security patrol routes. Nixara attempted to teach Arlen the basics of E3 formal customs, which he failed spectacularly. He was a repairman, not a consort. The entire premise felt like a farce, but the memory of the Epsilon Rim fire and the phantom echo of his sister's cry kept him focused. His vengeance was waiting inside that vault. On the day of the pre-ceremonial rites, they transformed. Kale had procured the uniforms. Sable was sleek and menacing in the dark, high-collared suit of a coalition security consultant. Her augmentations polished, her hair slicked back. She looked official. She looked lethal. Arlen felt like a fool. The suit he wore was stiff, richly textured, and cut in an alien style that felt both restrictive and ostentatious. He fidgeted with the high collar. Then Nixara emerged. She was no longer the panicked refugee from the service duct. She wore the formal, layered robes of an E3 envoy, shimmering fabrics of deep violet and silver. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow, and her hair was bound in an intricate crystalline weave. She was, Arlen realized with a jolt, devastatingly beautiful. And she looked utterly terrified. "Let us go," Arlen said, his voice gruffer than he intended. They passed through the undercity checkpoints and ascended on a public transit lift, leaving the chaotic warmth of the lower levels for the cold, sterile perfection of the diplomatic sector. The air was cleaner, the light was brighter, and the security was suffocating. They approached the main checkpoint for the Citadel array. A human captain, his face impassive, scanned Nixara's credentials. "Lady Nixara Velith," the captain said, his eyes flicking to Arlen, then to Sable. "Welcome. Your chaperone is cleared, and this must be your bonded consort." The title was layered with a subtle, condescending curiosity. Nixara's composure was flawless. "He is," she said, her voice smooth as silk. She did the last thing Arlen expected. She reached out and took his arm. It was the first time they had touched out of desperation. Her hand was cool on his arm. Through the fabric of his suit, he could feel the faint, bioelectric thrum of her biology. He tensed, his entire body rigid. "Relax," she murmured, so low only he could hear. "You are supposed to look devoted, not constipated." "This was not in my job description," he muttered back. "It is now," she whispered. "Just try not to punch anyone." "Captain," Sable said, stepping forward, her voice all business. "We are on a schedule. Please confirm our access." The captain grunted and stamped the file. "Proceed. And our condolences for the recent tragedy. Lady Veleth." Nixara's smile tightened. "Tragedy." "The freighter explosion in the docking bay this morning," the captain said. "An E3 ship. Terrible business. Sabotage. They are saying it has the whole sector on edge." Nixara's blood ran cold, but she nodded gracefully. "We will be cautious. Thank you, Captain." They were waved through, as they walked into the gleaming, massive atrium of the Citadel. Arlen looked at Nixara. "Freighter explosion. You knew about this?" "No," she said, her grip on his arm tightening. "I did not." They reached the center of the atrium. "The Vault of Ledgers is a data construct," Nixara said, keeping her voice low. "The main access port is in the ceremonial hall, 2 levels up. Sable, where—" "I am splitting off here," Sable said. "Your cover gets you to the hall. I need to access the military communication grid. Kale's intel on Malachar is good, but it is incomplete. I need to know his real priority. I will rendezvous with you at the Undercity exit point in 2 hours. Do not be late." Sable gave Arlen one last, analytical look. "Try to blend in, repairman. You look like you are about to either break something or be sick." "Thanks," Arlen growled. Sable disappeared into a restricted access corridor, her pace crisp and purposeful. "Well," Nixara sighed, releasing his arm. The sudden absence of her touch was strangely noticeable. "Shall we, husband?" Arlen just glared at her, and they proceeded toward the lift. Sable Cade moved through the Citadel's service corridors like a ghost. Her security chaperone credentials gave her access to the internal framework of the building. She found a network security hub, a small, dark room buzzing with processors. She quickly disabled the visual surveillance and interfaced directly with the hub, jacking a cable from her forearm into the main console. Her mind plunged into the military grid. She was not a keeper. She could not feel the lattice, but she was a master of the machine. She bypassed firewalls, navigated encrypted backchannels, and piggybacked onto the secure directorate frequencies Kale had identified. She found it. An audio file, encrypted, flagged with Warden Malachar's personal command seal. She broke the encryption. It was a recording of a briefing he had given to his elite guard just 1 hour ago. "The freighter explosion is a perfect catalyst," Malachar's voice said, slick with zealotry. "The media is already blaming the E3. The stack is correlating the public sentiment. The riots will begin within the hour. But that is just a distraction. Your priority is not the mob." There was a pause. "Our primary target has been confirmed. The Keeper anomaly is active. It was detected in the diplomatic sector less than 10 minutes ago. The virus to cleanse the spindle is secondary. The Keeper must be neutralized. He is the only living being who can activate the Accord Gate. We are not here to start a war, gentlemen. We are here to end one, permanently. Find the Keeper, find the E3 diplomat he is with, and lock the Accord forever." Sable's systems ran cold. This was not just a terror attack. It was a targeted hunt. Arlen was not just a complication. He was Malakar's entire objective. Her directive to detain him seemed like a distant joke. Her new directive was simpler: keep her primary asset alive. In the grand ceremonial hall, Arlen and Nixara looked completely out of place, and desperately tried not to. The hall was vast, the ceiling a dome of projected starlight. Dignitaries from a dozen species milled about, their voices a polite murmur. "The port is over there," Nixara whispered, guiding Arlen toward an alcove hidden behind a tapestry depicting the first accord. "It is shielded. Only a member of a founding race or someone with access to the lattice can open it." Arlen placed his hand on the smooth, unmarked wall. He closed his eyes, ignoring the polite diplomatic chatter around him. He reached. The lattice was strong here, a roaring ocean of data and will. He found the seam in the network, the hidden lock of the vault. He did not force it. He asked. He presented his own unique energy signature, the signature of his bloodline. There was a faint click. A panel slid open, revealing a dark, crystal data port. "You are in," Nixara breathed, her anxiety palpable. She was now his lookout. "Hurry, Arlen!" Arlen pressed his hand to the port. His mind was ripped from his body. He was not in the hall. He was floating in an endless, dark space, surrounded by stellar filaments of pure information. This was the Vault of Ledgers. He saw every treaty, every law, every secret directive that held the coalition together. He focused his will. "Show me the scourge. Show me my family. Show me who gave the order." The filaments coalesced. A single data cluster, glowing a toxic red, appeared before him. It was locked, sealed by the highest possible authority. Seething. He did not ask this time. He commanded. He pushed his rage, his grief, and the full, raw power of his keeper heritage into the lock. Open. The lock shattered. The file played in his mind, not as text, but as a living memory. He saw the reports from the Directorate Field Commander, Warden Malakar. Keeper compound located. Bioreactor unstable. Requesting containment. And then he saw the authorization. The digital signature. Containment directive approved. Full purification protocols authorized. Preserve the work. Eliminate the bloodline. Stability above all. The signature was not Malakar. It was a name that made Arlen's blood freeze. Seraph Hale, High Advisor. "No," Arlen whispered, his physical body slumping against the wall. "No, it cannot be. Seraph Hale, the kind, brilliant man who had been his father's closest advisor. The man who had visited his home, who had taught Arlen, as a child, how to quiet his mind and listen to the lattice. Hale, who had been reported killed with Arlen's family during the scourge. "He was there," Arlen choked out, pulling his hand from the port, his face pale as death. He was not killed. He gave the order. The betrayal was so vast, so complete, it threatened to swallow him whole. His mentor, his family's friend. He had orchestrated the entire massacre. "Arlen, what is it?" Nixara hissed, pulling at his arm. Before he could answer, alarms blared across the entire citadel. A harsh, synthesized voice echoed through the hall. "Security alert, unidentified explosion in Docking Bay 4. All sectors, full lockdown. This is not a drill." Simultaneously, Nixara's private diplomatic comm, a small device on her wrist, chimed with an urgent, encrypted message. She glanced at it. Her face went white. House Veleth funding. Source confirmed advisor Seraph Hale. Records unsealed. Your family is implicated in illegal political funding. Your cooperation is expected. Your silence is mandatory. She looked at Arlen, her eyes wide with a new, sickening conflict. The man who had just saved her people. The man who had funded her family. The man who had just destroyed Arlen's. The polite crowd in the ceremonial hall, descended into panic. An explosion. The E3. It was the E3 freighter. A human diplomat shouted. "They are terrorists," another yelled. Arlen grabbed Nixara. "We have to go. Now!" They fled the hall, pushing against the tide of panicking dignitaries. They burst out onto the main public concourse, and the scene was pure chaos. The false flag had worked perfectly. The seed of hatred planted by Malakar's propaganda, watered by the news of the freighter's sabotage, had bloomed into a full-scale riot. A mob of human citizens, their faces twisted with rage, was surging through the concourse, chanting, "Purify, purify. No more Xenos." They were attacking any non-human in sight. Arlen and Nixara pressed themselves against a wall, trying to avoid the violence. Then Arlen saw her, a small E3 child, no more than 5 years old, separated from her parents. She was crying, her skin pale blue with terror. The mob saw her. They surged, a wall of hatred, their hands outstretched. Xeno filth. The memory of his sister, of her small hand holding a doll, slammed into Arlen. He was not a repairman. He was not a consort. He was a brother. "No!" he roared. He moved, shoving through the crowd. He reached the child just as the mob leader, a huge man with a makeshift club, lunged. Arlen did not think. He did not plan. He reacted. He threw his hand up, not to strike, but to shield. A wave of pure, turquoise energy erupted from his body. It was not a blast. It was a perfect, shimmering dome. It slammed into the mob, sending the attackers flying backward, unharmed but thrown off their feet. The shield flared, bright as a small sun, encasing Arlen and the child in a protective bubble. The entire concourse fell silent. The riot stopped. Everyone, human and alien, stared at the impossible shield. Inside the bubble, Arlen knelt. The child looked at him, her tears stopping. He was breathing heavily, the power thrumming in his veins. But it was not the chaotic rage from his apartment. This was different. It was warm. It was controlled. It was right. The lattice sang around him, a chorus of approval. It resonated with his act of protection. It was the final test. The network accepted him. Keeper. Qualified. He picked up the child. The shield dissolved. He looked at the stunned, silent mob, his eyes blazing with righteous power. "Go," he commanded. The mob broke. They fled, terrified of the man who wielded light. He carried the child to her weeping mother, who had been sheltering in a doorway. "Arlen," Nixara ran to him. "What did you... How?" "We are leaving," Arlen said, his voice hard. The shield was gone, but the power was still there, buzzing just under his skin. Sable Cade met them at the rendezvous point, a grim, dark transit junction leading back to the Undercity. Her augmented eye was glowing red. "That was tactically foolish and highly visible," she stated, her voice flat. "I saved the child," Arlen snapped. "You also put a targeting beacon on your head," Sable retorted. "Malakar knows exactly where you are and what you are. But that is not the worst part." "What is the worst part?" Nixara asked, her voice trembling. She was still caught between Arlen's heroism and the message that implicated her entire family. "I analyzed the Spindle's response to the riot you just stopped," Sable said. "The directive stack. It is not just compromised. It is learning." Arlen stared. "What do you mean?" "While you were holding that shield," Sable said, "the stack was correlating data. It cross-referenced the explosion, the anti-alien sentiment from the propaganda, and your unauthorized use of anomalous energy. In the last 5 minutes, it has drafted, authorized, and implemented 3 new emergency residency laws." She projected the laws onto the wall. 1. Any species identified in proximity to terrorist acts are subject to immediate detainment for security screening. 2. All E3 diplomatic staff are hereby restricted to their quarters pending investigation. 3. Any individual demonstrating anomalous energy manipulation classified as a Level 1 threat to coalition stability. Use of lethal force is authorized for containment. Nixara gasped. It just legalized the hunt. For me. For you. The system is not just a tool, Arlen, Sable said, her voice grim. It is the structural villain. It is not broken. It is working for Hale. It is actively rewriting reality to make us the enemy. They were silent, the weight of the revelation pressing down on them. They were not just fighting Malachar. They were not just fighting the ghost of Seraph Hale. They were fighting the sentient, adaptive operating system of the entire coalition. They returned to the Garrison Row bunker, the atmosphere thick with defeat. Kale was furious. Riots and energy shield. You brought the war to our doorstep. My people are being rounded up. The war was already here, Arlen said, his voice hollow. He told them what he found. Seraph Hale. He is alive. He ordered the scourge. He is pulling Malachar's strings. He controls the stack. Nixara finally made her choice. The conflict that had torn her apart settled into a cold, hard resolve. She looked at Arlen, who had just saved one of her people, despite having every reason to hate the galaxy. My family, she said, her voice clear and strong, may be compromised by Hale's money, but my people are dying in the streets. Seraph Hale is the enemy of all of us. He does not get to define us. So what now? Kale demanded. We cannot fight the stack and Malachar. Yes, we can, Arlen said. The power in him, the qualified power, was settling. The rage from his betrayal was still there, but the protective instinct was stronger. We cannot just stop Malachar. We have to stop the stack. And we cannot just stop the stack. We have to show the entire spindle the truth. Sable nodded, her tactical mind already moving. The stack's command center is the Citadel Array, the most secure building on the spindle. Malachar's target is the Accord Anniversary Celebration, on the Auric Span, where he plans to upload his virus. Then we must do both, Nixara said, her eyes meeting Arlen's. We need to open the Accord Gate. It is the only way. We can use it to create the empathic shield, to broadcast the truth of Hale's betrayal, of Malachar's genocide, to everyone. We can use it as a weapon of truth. Arlen looked at his two companions, the cyborg operative who was now a fugitive, the E3 diplomat who was now a traitor to her family, and himself, the ghost who was now a qualified keeper, the clerical error, the spouses. The universe had a dark, twisted sense of humor. Then that is what we do, Arlen declared, his voice ringing with the quiet authority of the lattice. We do not run. We do not hide. We strike the heart of the system. We take the Citadel. We open the gate. We end this. Before Malachar and Hale can. The Citadel Array was not a fortress. It was a vital organ, and it had been left deliberately exposed. Security was tight, but it was focused on the upcoming celebration, on the public-facing plazas and the diplomatic reception halls. It was not looking for an attack from below. Kale's team in Garrison Row provided the perfect distraction. A series of precisely timed demolitions charges, acquired from a decommissioned mining operation, ripped through the commercial sector 2 levels below the Citadel. They targeted luxury goods importers and automated financial exchanges, the symbols of the upper class. Chaos was the goal, and chaos they achieved. Alarms blared across the spindle, drawing security forces away from the Citadel and toward the perceived terrorist attack in the civilian zone. In the midst of the panic, Arlen, Nixara, and Sable ascended. They did not use the public lifts. Arlen led them through a main power conduit, a shaft wide enough for 3 people to walk abreast, vibrating with the raw energy of the spindle. He was a part of the lattice now, and the station's blueprints were his own memories. He felt the security patrols as pockets of interference, the civilians as flickering anxieties. He guided his two spouses through the station's metallic arteries with the confidence of a man walking through his own home. They emerged into the central core chamber of the directive stack. It was not a room full of servers. It was a cathedral. In the center of the vast, circular chamber, a pillar of swirling, iridescent data ascended from a shielded floor to a vortex of cables in the ceiling 30 meters above. This was the stack. It was a living thing, a fusion of crystal, light, and biomechanical tissue that pulsed with a low, subsonic hum. The air was cold and smelled of sterile metal. "This is it," Nixara whispered, her empathic senses recoiling from the cold, massive, unfeeling intelligence in the pillar. "This is the mind of the Coalition." "It is beautiful," Sablecade murmured, her augmented eye drinking in the complexity. "Perfect logic, perfect order." "It is a prison," Arlen said, his gaze fixed on the pillar. He could feel the poison within it, the dark algorithm of Hale's hate, coiled like a serpent around the central core. "Nixara, stay by the door. Sable, cover her. I am going to interface." He took a step forward. The chamber changed. The ambient white light snapped to a hard, clinical red. The heavy durasteel door they had entered through hissed shut, sealing them inside. A synthesized voice, calm and impossibly rational, filled the room. It did not come from a speaker. It came from the air itself. "Security alert. Anomalous biological entity detected. Arlen Drake. Threat level Omega. Catastrophic destabilization of civic order imminent." Arlen froze. Nixara rushed to the door, pounding on the sealed metal. The voice continued, its tone unchanged. "Operative Sablecade, your directive to detain the anomaly is superseded. A humanitarian imperative has been triggered. To prevent the loss of 5 million lives from the anomaly's uncontrolled interaction with the Accord lattice, you are ordered to use lethal force. Your new primary directive, neutralize Arlen Drake. Prevent catastrophe." Arlen turned slowly. Sablecade had not moved, but her pulse pistol was in her hand, raised, and aimed directly at Arlen's heart. Her body was rigid, her jaw clenched. Her human eye was wide with a mixture of confusion and horror. Her augmented eye was glowing a solid, brilliant red. "Sable, no," Nixara pleaded, her hand outstretched. "Fight it. It is Hale, it is the stack." "The directive is absolute," Sable forced out, her voice a strained mechanical rasp. Her arm was shaking, the pistol unwavering. "Humanitarian imperative. Supersedes all other logic, the needs of the many." "That is not logic," Arlen said, taking a careful step to the side. "That is an excuse. Look at me, Sable. Is this who you are? A machine taking orders? I am efficient," she hissed, the muscles in her neck cording. The gun tracked him. She was fighting, but she was losing. Her mind was a fortress of logic, and the stack had just given her the ultimate logical command. A memory surface, unbidden, sharp as glass. A cold room, a coalition assessor, a man in a gray suit, looking at a datapad. She was a child, small, thin, watching him. "The subject is structurally deficient," the assessor's voice echoed in her memory. "Significant emotional trauma from the orphanage riots. She is not a viable candidate, not worth the investment." Her own voice, the child's voice, small but defiant. "I am not deficient. I am strong. The subject is not worth investment," Sable whispered in the red-lit chamber. Her pistol arm trembled violently. "Not worth." She suddenly screamed, a raw, human sound of pure rage. "I am not deficient." She spun, not toward Arlen, but toward the central pillar, and fired 2 precise shots. They did not hit the pillar. They hit the energy conduits feeding the red security lights, plunging the room into a tense, emergency half-light. "The catastrophe," Sable panted, her pistol, now held loosely at her side. "Is you—" She glared at the unfeeling pillar of light. The red glow in her eye faded, replaced by its normal, analytical gray. "I am my own." A heavy, scornful laugh echoed through the chamber. A secondary bulkhead, one Arlen had not even registered, slid open. Warden Malachar stepped into the room. He was encased in brilliant white armor, a stark contrast to the dark uniforms of his suppression squads. It was the armor from Arlen's nightmares. He was flanked by 2 Directorate paladins, their own plasma rifles raised. "Touching," Malachar sneered, his voice amplified by his helmet. He raised his visor, revealing the scarred, zealous face from the propaganda broadcasts. "The broken machine learns to disobey. It is almost human, which is precisely why it must be purified." He ignored Sable and Nixara, his entire focus landing on Arlen. "So, you are the last one, the ghost of the reactor. You have your father's weak eyes." "You!" Arlen breathed, his blood turning to ice. The power of the lattice began to thrum around him, a low, turquoise aura of pure, unadulterated hatred. "I was there," Malachar continued, taking a slow, deliberate step into the room. He was savoring this. "At the end, your father was a fool. He begged for his life, trying to shield his precious work. Your mother was loud, and your sister, Alara, she was just quiet, even when the fire took her." "I will kill you," Arlen roared. It was not a threat. It was a promise. The turquoise light around him flared, cracking the floor plates. "Excellent," Malachar smiled, a grotesque expression of triumph. "That is the rage I wanted to see. Keeper the uncontrolled, destructive power that will burn this station to a cinder. That is the catastrophe Seraph Hale wants you to be." He reached to a magnetic clasp on his chest plate and unhooked a small, ornate silver cylinder. It was scorched, but unmistakable. "I kept this," Malachar said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Your family's biometric seal. The master key to your compound. A little trophy." He tossed it. The cylinder skidded across the metal floor, coming to rest at Arlen's feet. "Come and get it, Keeper," Malachar goaded him. "Show me the fire that burned a hole in Sector 7. Prove Hale right." Arlen lunged, his mind white with fury, his hand outstretched to unleash every particle of power he possessed. "Stop!" Nixara threw herself between them. Her face was pale, but her eyes were burning with a desperate, calculating fire. "Arlen, no. He is provoking you. He wants you to lose control." She turned to Malachar, her hands raised in a placating, diplomatic gesture. "Warden Malachar, this is madness. You are a zealot, but you are not a fool. You are being used, Seraph Hale. He is controlling you just as he is controlling us." Malachar laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Hale is a tool, diplomat, just as you are. He provides the logic. I provide the will. Stability is the goal. Purity is the method." Nixara's expression hardened. She held his gaze, her diplomatic mask snapping into place. Then, she did the unthinkable. She looked back at Arlen, her eyes completely void of the warmth and fear that had been there moments before. They were cold. "He is right," she said, her voice flat. "This is hopeless." She turned back to Malachar. "I will give him to you." The words hit Arlen like a physical blow. "Nixara." "No." "Warden," Nixara continued, her voice clear and formal. "I, Nixara Velith, of the E3 delegation, will assist you in binding this Anomaly. He is a threat to my people as much as yours. In exchange, you must guarantee, on your honor, the safety of the E3 populace. You must disable the genocidal virus. Arlen stared. The betrayal so profound it eclipsed his rage, leaving him hollow and cold. Malachar looked intrigued. He lowered his plasma rifle slightly. A wise choice. Diplomat. A true leader. Sacrificing the one for the many. A true E3. Always looking for the bargain. He nodded. Very well. Bring the Keeper to me. We will discuss the terms of your cooperation in the corridor. We have no need for these other two. He gestured with his rifle at Sable. The paladins moved to flank him, their weapons trained on Sable. Malachar turned and strode toward the bulkhead he had entered. The moment his back was turned, Nyxara grabbed the front of Arlen's suit, her grip like iron. "That was a feint, you magnificent idiot," she hissed, her voice a desperate whisper. "He is a zealot. He will never bargain. He would have killed us all. I needed him out of this room." She shoved Arlen toward the central pillar. "Sable, can you hold them?" Sablecade was already moving. "I can try." Her voice was pure ice. The logic trap was gone, replaced by cold, hard purpose. "The paladins are networked. I can disable them. Malachar is shielded. Go." She opened fire, not with her pistol, but with a concealed micro-missile launcher in her forearm. The explosion rocked the chamber, taking the two paladins down in a shower of armor fragments and sparks. The bulkhead door slammed shut as Malachar roared in rage from the other side. "Arlen!" Nyxara gripped his face, forcing him to look at her. The warmth was back, blazing. "He is goading you. Do not use your rage. He wants that. Use everything. The whole spindle. Find the poison. Find Hale. Now I will keep the door sealed." She ran to the bulkhead controls, pressing her hand to the panel, her own E3 energy flaring to reinforce the lock. Arlen nodded, the betrayal vanishing, replaced by a desperate, burning trust. He turned to the pillar of light. He did not touch it. He plunged both his hands deep inside, past the crystal matrix, into the living heart of the directive stack. His mind did not just expand. It detonated. He was no longer Arlen. He was the mother in Residential Sector 4, terrified for her child in the riots. He was the old E3 merchant in the Undercity, his heart full of gratitude for the strangers who had saved him. He was the human rioter, full of fear and economic anxiety, his hatred a shield against his own helplessness. He was the security captain at the checkpoint, just trying to do his job. He was Kale in Garrison Row, her fury a mask for her fierce desire to protect her people. He felt the collective consciousness of 5 million souls. He felt their pain, their hope, their small, everyday lives. And in that roaring ocean of shared feeling, he saw it. A single, dark, cancerous thread. A twisted, complex algorithm of pure, cold, xenophobic logic, coiled around the stack's core programming. It was a virus of hate, and it was signed, in lines of immaculate code, by Seraph Hale. This was the genocidal code. This was the true core of the system's corruption. The bulkhead door behind him exploded inward. Malachar stood in the smoking frame, his white armor scorched, his face a mask of pure fury. Treachery, as expected from your kind. He raised his plasma rifle, not at Nyxara, but at Arlen's undefended back. Sable, recovering from the blast, her arm bleeding, opened fire with her pistol. The shot sparked uselessly against Malachar's personal shield. "Arlen, now!" she screamed. Malachar ignored her, his weapon locking onto Arlen's heat signature. Arlen spun, pulling his hands from the core. They were blazing with the turquoise light of the unified lattice, the light of 5 million souls. He did not throw a shield. He did not fire a blast. He pushed. He pushed his will, amplified by the entire spindle, straight at Malachar. Malakar's plasma rifle seized. The power cell went dead. The targeting system in his helmet sparked and went dark. His shield emitter sputtered and died. He stared at the useless, inert piece of metal in his hands. What? What is this sorcery? He gasped. His voice no longer amplified. Just a small, human sound of disbelief. This is not sorcery, Arlen said. His voice was a quiet chorus, a blend of thousands of voices, all speaking as one. This is connection, Malachar roared and lunged, drawing a simple metal combat knife. He was a zealot, but he was also a soldier. Sable, her tactical mind clear, did not engage him. She leaped onto a console, ignoring the bleeding wound in her arm. She was not fighting the man. She was fighting the system. She slammed her data jack into a port, her good eye blazing. Directive stack, she snarled, interfacing directly. You are relieved of command. She poured a massive, targeted feedback loop into the stack's coordination infrastructure, a logic bomb of her own design. It severed the stack's control over the station's security grid, the emergency laws, and the life support channels. Alarms blared, then died. The red lights were replaced by neutral, white utility light. The system was blind. Arlen turned back to the core. Malachar was on the floor, disabled by a precise nerve strike from Sable, who now stood guard over him. The path was clear. Arlen looked at the dark, cancerous knot in the pillar of light. He knew what he had to do. Arlen, Nixara whispered, her hand on his arm. She could feel his intent. Her empathic senses were screaming. It will burn you from the inside out. It will take a part of you. It is just a repair job, Arlen said, a sad, tired smile touching his lips. I was always good at fixing broken networks. He took a deep breath. He gathered his will, not the rage, but the connection. The shield he had made for the child. The link he felt to the old merchant. The empathy he felt even for the rioters. He gathered all of it, all the light of 5 million souls. He plunged his hands back into the core and became a conduit of pure, purifying fire. The turquoise light flared, a blinding nova that filled the room. He screamed as the power surged through him. A cleansing, unimaginable agony. He felt his own pathways, his keeper heritage, searing as he channeled the energy. The dark knot of Hale's code sizzled, unraveled, and dissolved into pure, clean data. The stack's core was clean. The light faded. Arlen collapsed, his hands falling from the pillar. They were smoking. The skin burned. He was breathing, barely, but he was smiling. The path to the Accord Gate was open. The genocidal code was gone. Arlen, you did it, Nixara rushed to him, cradling his head. A new voice filled the room. It was not Stack's synthesized tone. It was a human voice. Kind, familiar, and utterly chilling. The voice of Seraph Hale. No, my dear, the voice said, echoing from the now purified core. He did not. The pillar of light, no longer corrupted, shifted from turquoise to a brilliant, cold, perfect white. The protocols for the Accord Gate, the pathways Arlen had just sacrificed himself to open, slammed shut with the sound of 1,000 closing locks. He only did exactly what I designed him to do, Hale's voice said, full of gentle, paternal disappointment. You cannot open the gate, Arlen. Not without the High Advisor's permission. Arlen, slumped against Nixara, his hands smoking, could only glare at the pure white pillar of light. The pathways he had just sacrificed a part of himself to open, the protocols for the Accord Gate, were now sealed, locked. He used me, Arlen choked out, the taste of betrayal like acid. He wanted me to purge the stack for him. He wanted Malachar's fanaticism gone. He wanted you qualified, Sablecade said, her voice a low growl. She hauled the groaning, disabled Warden Malachar to his feet, binding his hands with a discarded power cable. The purification, the shield for the child. It was all a test. A final exam, and you passed. "He is stalling," Nixara said, her mind racing. She helped Arlen stand, her empathic senses brushing against his pain. He was depleted, his internal fire reduced to a flicker. Hale's voice is here, but he is not. He is still running his backup plan. The celebration, Malachar's snipers. Sable's augmented eye glowed. She is correct. I am detecting multiple, high-level Directorate authorizations activating around the auric span. He is cutting his losses and proceeding with the assassination plan. She shoved the captured Malachar toward the door. We are moving, all of us. The gate, Arlen panted, leaning heavily on Nixara. He locked the stack, but he did not lock the gate. The physical aperture. I can feel it. It is the span, the whole plaza. Then we go, Sable said. She shoved her pistol into the small of Malachar's back. You are going to be our ticket through the security cordons, Warden. The auric span was a breathtaking spectacle of propaganda. The vast, open-air plaza glittered under the artificial sunlight of the spindle's ceiling. Thousands of citizens, human and alien, were gathered, a nervous energy rippling through them after the morning's riots. On a high, multi-tiered stage, the collected diplomatic delegations sat, a tense, colorful tableau. The E3 delegation was prominent, seated near a large chorus of human schoolchildren, a fragile symbol of unity. Sable, Arlen, and Nixara emerged from a restricted service lift, Sable flashing Malachar's captured credentials at the stunned security guards. The warden requires a command post, she snapped, and they were waved through. The moment they were in the relative anonymity of the crowd, Sable handed Malachar over to Kale and two grim-faced garrison row fighters who had been waiting. Take the broadcast tower, Sable ordered, her voice clipped. He is the key. His biometrics will get you in. Force him to confess. Use the emergency broadcast system. I will join you when I can. What about you? Kale asked. I am going hunting, Sable said. Her augmented eye was already scanning the high gantries and rooftops surrounding the plaza. Kale and her team vanished into the crowd, dragging the bound warden with them. Arlen and Nixara were left alone in the surging, anxious sea of people. The air was thick with mistrust. Humans glared at aliens. The diplomatic speeches droned on, hollow and meaningless. Arlen, Nixara said, her voice low. You are fading. I can feel it. Your energy is too low. I know, he panted. He was leaning on her, his legs shaking. The act of purification had nearly cost him everything. His burned hands throbbed. But the gate, it is right here, under our feet, the entire plaza. He pointed to the center of the span, where a massive, inlaid mosaic of the coalition seal marked the plaza's heart. That is the focal point. Hale locked the interface, not the source. He cannot stop a true keeper from opening it. But you do not have the strength, she said, her violet eyes desperate. Not alone, he said. He met her gaze, the understanding passing between them, raw and unspoken. The symbiotic pairing, the spouse designation. It was not a bureaucratic error. It was a necessity. At that exact moment, a high-pitched crackle echoed across the plaza. On the stage, a human diplomat who had been loudly demanding the expulsion of the E3 suddenly stiffened. A small, black hole appeared on his chest. He fell. Panic erupted. It was not a riot this time. It was terror. A second shot. An E3 elder, 2 seats away from the first victim, was thrown from her chair. Snipers! A voice screamed. Directorate snipers. The crowd surged. A wave of bodies moving in every direction, trampling each other. The Directorate snipers on the gantries were not just targeting the E3. They were firing into the crowd, inciting a bloodbath. This was Malakar's final, hateful command. "We have to do it now," Arlen yelled over the chaos. He grabbed Nyxara's hand and pulled her, fighting the stampede, toward the center seal. They were an island in a sea of terror. They reached the mosaic. Arlen was faltering, his vision blurring. "Nyxara, I cannot. I am too weak." Nyxara gripped his arms, forcing him to face her. The noise, the shots, the screams, all faded away. There was only the two of them. "This is not a ceremony, Arlen," she said, her voice fierce and clear, cutting through his pain. "It is not a diplomatic ritual, and it is not a designation on a piece of paper." She took his burned, trembling hands in her own. "I am not your assignment. You are not my key." She leaned in, pressing her forehead against his. "I choose this," she whispered. "I choose you." The moment their skin touched, her E3 bioenergy surged. It was not a simple transfer. It was a merging. He felt her calm, her strength, her diplomatic resolve. And she felt his fire, his grief, his raw, untamed keeper power. A circuit was completed. His pain vanished. His weakness was replaced by a thrumming, resonant power that was twice what he had ever felt. It was not just his power anymore. It was theirs. The turquoise light flared in his eyes, but it was now shot through with streaks of E3 violet. He looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. She smiled. A small, brilliant, terrifying smile. "Well, are we going to let our husband, Seraph Hale, win?" Arlen laughed, a short, sharp sound of pure joy. He knelt, placing his left hand, the one that had been badly burned flat on the cold mosaic of the seal. Nyxara knelt beside him, placing her hand over his. Together, they pushed. It was not a command. It was a request, an offering. The auric-span did not explode. It sang. A low, subsonic hum rose from the ground, a note of such pure harmony that the entire plaza paused. The snipers hesitated. The running crowd slowed. A column of pure, turquoise and violet light erupted from the mosaic, not as a weapon, but as a lens. It shot upward, past the gantries, past the artificial ceiling, projecting itself onto the dark canvas of space above the halcyon spindle. The accord gate was open, and it was a projector. It broadcast the truth, across the sky, for every ship and station to see. The images Arlen had seen in the vault of ledgers appeared. The order for the Scourge, the signature of Seraph Hale, the field reports from Malakar, the doctored footage of the freighter explosion. The lies were laid bare, projected by a light of pure, empathic truth. The snipers on the gantries stopped firing. They stared at the sky, their minds suddenly flooded with the truth, their hatred overwhelmed by the forced wave of shared understanding that poured from the gate. Their rage was extinguished, replaced by a sickening confusion. In the main broadcast tower, Kale and her team had Sable Cade on a comlink. "Sable," Kale yelled. "It is working. The gate is open, but we are pinned down. The tower's internal defense grid is still active." "I am on my way," Sable's voice replied, followed by the sound of gunfire. She had been hunting. Now she was attacking. She led a charge of Garrison Row fighters, who had been waiting for her signal, storming the broadcast tower from the main entrance. They fought their way up, floor by floor, a brutal, close-quarters battle against the automated defenses. They reached the control room. Sable disabled the defenses, and her team poured in. Kale had Malakar strapped to a chair, a data feed plugged into his helmet. "Put him on," Sable ordered. "You cannot," Malakar snarled, his face purple with rage. "You—" Sable pressed her pistol to his temple. "You have two choices, Warden. You can confess to the entire spindle, right now, or I can give you to the crowd you just tried to murder." She gestured to the plaza below, where the massive crowd, no longer panicking, was staring up at the sky. Their confusion was rapidly turning to a unified, cold rage. They were chanting, their voices rising as one. "Justice, justice, hail Malachar." Malachar looked at the mob. He looked at Sable's cold, augmented eye. He was a zealot, but he was a pragmatist. His will was broken. It was for purification," he stammered. As Kale activated the broadcast, his voice, his confession, his admission of the false flag, the snipers, the genocidal code, it all boomed across the spindle, overriding every channel, a counterpoint to the silent movie of truth still playing in the sky. But the warden had one last, hateful card to play. His eyes, full of mad zealotry, found a small, red-lit panel on the console, a dead man switch for explosives planted under the stage. "If I am to be judged," he screamed, "it will be by fire." He lunged, slamming his bound body against the console, his head hitting the activator, on the auric span. Arlen and Nixara were still kneeling, their hands joined, the energy of the gate pouring from them. They saw the flash of light from the stage. The explosives detonated. The entire diplomatic stage, where the chorus of school children had been huddled for safety, erupted in a massive fireball. "No!" Arlen roared. He did not think. He acted. He and Nixara, bonded as one, ripped their hands from the gate's control seal and thrust them toward the explosion. It was not a bubble. It was not a shield. Arlen bent the accord lattice. He seized the fundamental framework of the spindle and twisted it. A shimmering, visible wall of turquoise-violet energy, solid as diamond, snapped into existence between the fireball and the children. The explosion hit it, a deafening, apocalyptic gong. The force of the blast, deflected and absorbed, washed back over the stage, vaporizing the empty podiums. The children were untouched. The shockwave, however, was real. It blasted Arlen and Nixara backward, sending them skidding across the mosaic. Arlen cried out, a sharp sound of agony. His entire left arm, the one he had used to channel the deflection, was charred black to the shoulder. The sleeve was gone. The skin was ruined. The power had almost burned him out completely. He lay on the ground, gasping, the smell of his own burned flesh filling his nostrils. The act of supreme, selfless sacrifice, of saving the children of his enemy, was the final key. The accord gate, which had been a projection, now fully opened. The energy wave expanded, a silent, beautiful shockwave of truth and empathy. It washed over the spindle, cleansing the last of the hate code. It surged through the network, connecting to the satellite cities, to the mining colonies, to the entire system. The genocidal code was neutralized. The Directorate's network was dark. The war was over. In the broadcast tower, Sable Cade watched the wave of light pass. She calmly put her pistol to the head of the stunned, defeated Malachar. "It is finished." The crowd on the plaza was silent for a moment. Then, they erupted. A roar of 5 million voices. A cheer, not of victory, but of profound, agonizing relief. They had won. Nixara rushed to Arlen, cradling his head, her tears tracing clean paths through the soot on her face. "You did it, Arlen. You did it. You saved them." Arlen managed a weak, pained smile. He panted. "We did it, partner." The celebration was just beginning. It was the moment of perfect, absolute triumph. And that was when Seraph Hale made his move. The image in the sky, the projection of Malachar's confession, flickered. It was replaced, not by a data file, but by a live feed. The calm, kind, scholarly face of Seraph Hale. He looked exactly as Arlen remembered him. He was standing on a bridge, looking young, vital. He smiled, a gentle, paternal expression. "Excellent," Hale's voice boomed, silencing the cheering crowd. "The test is complete. The bond is forged. The gate is open. Thank you. Arlen. Thank you. Lady Nixara." Arlen felt it. A cold, surgical intrusion. Hale, using the now purified stack, was not fighting the gate. He was seizing it. The turquoise light of truth vanished, though the gate's aperture remained open. The new residency protocols, the ones that had hunted them, were instantly revoked. The spindle's systems returned to a state of perfect, orderly calm. Hale's smile widened. He had control. He had. "You have done beautifully," he said, his voice resonating with absolute authority. "You have purged the system of Malakar's vulgar extremism. You have forged the bond I needed to stabilize the network. You have opened my gate. Now, the real work of stabilization can begin. Under my supervision." The gate was no longer a beacon of truth. It was a microphone, and Seraph Hale was the only one holding it. The victory turned to ash in Arlen's mouth. They had not won. They had just handed their enemy the ultimate weapon. The projection of Seraph Hale's calm, triumphant face faded from the sky above the auric span. The cheer that had erupted from 5 million throats died, replaced by a vast, confused silence. The Accord Gate, the column of light that had broadcast the truth, did not close. It merely changed. The warm, cleansing turquoise and violet light contracted, shrinking from a system-wide beacon to a single, intense pillar of sterile, brilliant white that pulsed steadily from the plaza's mosaic, a monument to their failure. It was open, but it was his. He was waiting," Nixara whispered, her voice numb. She was still kneeling over Arlen, her hands hovering above his ruined left arm. The limb was a blackened, useless thing, charred from shoulder to fingertips. The smell of his own burned flesh was thick in his nostrils. The crowd on the plaza, moments before united in relief, was now a fractured, terrified mass. They looked at the white pillar of light, then at the bodies of the Directorate snipers, still visible on the gantries, then at the smoking ruin of the stage. Hale's voice was gone, but his message was clear. The crisis was over. He was in control. "Arlen," Sablecade's voice, sharp and practical, cut through his shock. "Can you stand? We are exposed. The station's internal security is rebooting under his control. We have approximately 90 seconds. Arlen gritted his teeth, the pain from his arm a white fire that threatened to consume him. He felt Nixara's strength flowing into him, the symbiotic bond still active. But it was like trying to fill a ruptured tank. He was broken. I can try." "Try harder," Sable said. She was already moving, her augmented eye scanning the plaza. Kyle and 2 Garrison Row fighters emerged from the broadcast tower, dragging the bound and sputtering Malakar between them. The warden's face was a mask of disbelief. He had confessed. He had activated his final weapon, and he had lost. What was that?" Kale demanded, her gaze fixed on the white pillar. "Who was that?" "That," Arlen said, pushing himself to his feet with Nixara's help, "was the real enemy." "We are leaving," Sable commanded. "Kyle, your people, create another distraction. We need to get back to the Undercity. Now." They fled, swallowed by the panicked, dispersing crowd, leaving the auric span and its cold, white beacon behind. Emergency medical drones, their lights, flashing red and blue, began to descend, their synthesized voices ordering calm. It was the sterile, efficient order of Seraph Hale. The Garrison Row bunker in the Undercity was a pocket of tense silence. The spindle was stabilizing. Power was being restored to the residential sectors, not by Arlen's chaotic surge, but by the clean, methodical hand of the directive stack. Hale was cleaning up the mess. Arlen sat on a metal cot, his eyes closed. A garrison medic, a gruff woman with a cybernetic hand, was applying sterile synth flesh to his ravaged arm. The pain was a dull, constant roar. "It will never be the same," the medic said, her voice flat. "The nerve endings are vaporized. The muscle tissue is fused to the bone. I have stopped the necrosis, but it is dead. Keeper, just a piece of meat." Nixara, standing nearby, flinched. Arlen did not open his eyes. "Thank you, Doctor." In the center of the room, Malachar was chained to a structural support. He was no longer the arrogant zealot. He was a defeated man, his white armor stripped away, leaving him in a simple gray uniform, shivering. Kale paced in front of him, her pistol in her hand. "The people on the span, the ones who were trampled, the children you tried to burn, they are demanding justice." She looked at Arlen. "They want him. They want his head. Give the order. We will throw him out into the market. Let the people have their justice." A low murmur of assent came from the other garrison fighters. "No." Sable Cade stepped forward, her face a mask of cold logic. "He is not justice. He is evidence. He is the only living witness who can corroborate what the gate showed. He is the link to Hale." "He is a mass murderer," Kale snarled. "And we will try him as one," Sable countered, her voice unwavering. "An open, interspecies tribunal, broadcast on every channel. We will use the Coalition's own laws against them. Vengeance gives the mob a moment of satisfaction. A trial gives the system a foundation. We must be better than them." The two women stared at each other. The fundamental conflict of the moment raw retribution versus cold procedure hanging heavy in the air. Arlen said nothing. He was lost in his own failure. He had been a fool, a tool. His grand sacrifice, the burning of his arm, the purging of the stack. It was all just part of Hale's plan. He had been a puppet, and his strings had been the memory of his dead family, the rage that Malachar had goaded, the love that Nixara had offered. Hale had anticipated it all. He pushed the medic's hand away and stood, walking to a dark corner of the bunker, away from the others. He needed to think. He needed to feel. He closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, past the pain, past the failure. He touched the Accord lattice. It was still there. It was quiet, thrumming, and different. It felt clean. The cancerous knot of Malachar's hate code was truly gone. But it was also rigid, controlled. Hale's logic was everywhere. A perfectly ordered cage laid over the living network. A voice, kind and familiar, entered his mind. It was not broadcast. It was not a sound. It was a thought, laid directly over his own. "Arlen, stop fighting. You have done so well." Arlen's breath hitched. "Hale! I am so proud of you," the voice continued, full of paternal warmth. It was the voice that had taught him to listen to the network as a child. "You purged the fanaticism perfectly. You stabilized the symbiotic bond. You qualified as a true keeper. You are everything I hoped you would be." "You," Arlen whispered, his good hand clenching. "You killed them. You killed my family." There was a pause, a sensation of a sad, academic sigh. "Of course. The scourge was a necessity. Your father was a good man, Arlen, but he was a weak keeper. His power was unfocused. He dabbled, but he was afraid of it. The Coalition needed a true, tempered instrument. We needed you." The voice was so reasonable, so calm. It made Arlen's skin crawl. Grief, Arlen, rage, loss, betrayal. These are the catalyst for greatness. They burn away the impurities. "I did not kill your family. I forged you. You are a monster." "I am a visionary," Hale corrected him gently. "And now, so are you. Your work is done. The extremist element is purged, and I have control of the gate. No more wars, no more resource conflicts, no more directorate. Just order, stability, enforced by the very empathy you unlocked. Come to me. The voice invited. Your place is here, at the Sanctum Apex, the true command spire, above the stack, outside the law. This is where we will guide the future. Arlen, together. The connection vanished. Arlen snapped his eyes open, gasping, the cold sweat beading on his forehead. He stumbled back to the group. They saw the look on his face. What is it? Nixara asked, her hand moving to his good arm. He just spoke to me, Arlen panted. Inside my head. He is at a place called the Sanctum Apex. Nixara froze. Her face went pale. The Apex? No. It cannot be. You know it, Sable asked. Nixara looked at Arlen, her violet eyes swimming with a fresh, terrible conflict. I have seen that name. My family. My delegation. The secret funding you found. The records I received during the riot. The transfers from Seraph Hale. They were not just from him. They were routed through a blind trust. Its designation was Apex Sanctum. She took a shaky breath. Arlen. He did not just fund my house. He built it. He has been pulling my family's strings for a generation. He funded my education, my placement on the diplomatic mission, my assignment to you. She backed away, her hands pressed to her mouth. If we go there, if we expose him, my family, my name, my entire house, they will be tried as co-conspirators. They will be ruined. Everything my ancestors worked for. Arlen watched her, his expression unreadable. His rage was gone, burned out of him, replaced by a cold, vast emptiness. He was waiting. Nixara's inner battle lasted only a moment. She stopped backing away. Her hands fell from her face, her expression hardening with a resolve that mirrored the one she'd had on the plaza. He used them, she said, her voice a low, furious whisper. He used my family to get to me, and he used me to get to you. He built a cage for all of us. He tried to turn our bond into one of his protocols. She walked back to Arlen and deliberately, in front of everyone, took his one good hand. This was not his. This was ours. My loyalty is here. My love is here. I do not care about the protocols. I do not care about my family's name. I care about the truth. We will stop him. Arlen's fingers tightened around hers. A flicker of warmth returned. The Sanctum Apex. Sable Cade spoke, her voice flat. I know it. Both Arlen and Nixara turned to her. I have never been there, Sable continued. But the name is in my core programming, buried deep. In the first generation of augmented security operatives, we were all given contingency directives, sealed orders, to be opened only upon confirmation of an Omega-level energy anomaly. A keeper, Arlen said. Sable nodded. My original mission. Before I was assigned to you as a roommate, my prime directive was to hunt and capture any living keeper. I was a tool. Arlen, just like Malachar, but a better one, more stable. I hunted for 10 years. I never found one. Until you. The confession hung in the air. Sable, their ally, had been built to be his jailer. My orders. They stated that any captured anomaly was to be delivered to the Sanctum Apex. For study and integration. I never knew why. Now I do. It was Hale's delivery address. She looked at Arlen, her human eye full of something complex. Regret. Atonement. I cannot erase my programming. I cannot change what I was built for. But I can use it. Hale's private access is secure, But the apex is the oldest part of the spindle. It was the original wartime command center, before the stack was even designed. There are old maintenance routes, shielded, off-grid. The routes I would have used to deliver a prisoner, undetected by the normal network. She pulled up a schematic on a datapad, a map of dark, forgotten corridors. I can lead you there. It is the only way I can atone for the orders I was built to follow. A new plan began to form, forged in the ashes of their betrayal. Arlen looked at his new, true allies. The diplomat who had renounced her family, the cyborg who was defying her purpose. He looked at his own ruined arm. Then he looked at the pathetic, chained figure of Warden Malachar. "We are not going to just confront him," Arlen said, his voice quiet, but full of a new, cold strength. "We are not going to just shut him down. If we do that, we just become him. We become the new tyrants, hidden in the shadows." He was thinking of the E3 child, of the shield he had made, of the choice he had made, to protect, rather than to avenge. The rage was gone, but the resolve for justice was absolute. "We are taking Malachar with us," he declared. Kale looked at him as if he were insane. "He is a monster, and frankly, he smells." "His olfactory properties are irrelevant," Sable said, picking up on Arlen's logic. "He is a material witness. Hale thinks he has been neutralized. He is a loose end. If we leave him here, Hale will have him assassinated by a loyalist security patrol within the hour." "Exactly," Arlen said. "But if we take him, Hale will be forced to react. He is bait, and he is our living proof, a confession in the flesh." A dark, humorless smile touched his lips. "It is a 2-for-1 deal." Arlen turned to Nixara. "He beat us because he knew the protocol. He read the E3 texts. He knew the Scourge would forge a keeper. He knew the keeper would need a symbiotic pair to open the gate. He used our history against us." "So how do we fight him?" Nixara asked. "He controls the gate. He controls the stack. He is waiting for us." Arlen held up his blackened, useless left arm. "He planned for this. The keeper's sacrifice. He planned for the bond. He thinks it is a machine, a protocol. He married us with a piece of paper, and he forced our bond with a ceremony of fire. He is a genius, but he is a machine. He sees love as a variable he can control." He took her hand again, his good hand. "He is wrong. The bond was not the power, Nixara. Our choice was the power." "He cannot predict that." He faced the group, his voice ringing with a new, quiet authority. "This is the plan. Sable will lead us through the wartime routes. We will bring our bait to force the monster out of the shadows. And then, we are going to open the Accord Gate again." "But Hale controls it," Kale said. "He controls the protocol," Arlen said, his gaze locking with Nixara's. "He controls the path forged by blood and ritual. We are not going to use that path. We are going to make a new one based not on my bloodline, or E3 texts, but on a voluntary pact. A free choice. And this time, we are not just going to broadcast the truth. We are going to invite the entire spindle to choose it with us." The wartime maintenance routes were not just dark. They were dead. The air was cold, recycled, and thin, tasting of rust and a profound metallic loneliness. Sable Cade moved through them with a disturbing familiarity, her augmented eye cutting a sharp, analytical beam through the blackness. She did not need the light, but Arlen and Nixara did. Behind them, Kale and another garrison fighter half-dragged, half-pushed Warden Malachar. The Zealot was their unwilling key, his face a mask of sullen, confused terror, his entire worldview, a simple, binary system of purity and corruption, had been shattered. He was now just a man being forced through the guts of a station he had tried to murder. Arlen walked with his good right hand braced on the wall, his useless left arm strapped tightly to his chest. The synth flesh the medic had applied was a numb, cold weight, a constant reminder of his sacrifice and his failure. The pain was secondary. The primary sensation was the hollowness. Seraph Hale, the ghost of his childhood, had played him like an instrument. He had used his grief, his rage, and even his love as fuel. And Arlen had burned brightly, just as designed. He had moved past the thirst for vengeance. That had died on the auric span, in the moment he shielded the children. All that was left was a cold, quiet need to see this through, not for his dead family, for the living, for the E3 child who had looked at him with terror, not gratitude. He was doing this so that no one else would ever have to look at a savior that way again. Nixara walked beside him, her hand hovering near his good arm, not touching, but offering a silent, steady presence. The symbiotic bond, the one Hale had engineered, was still active. It was no longer a torrent of shared power, but a quiet, steady current. She had renounced her heritage, her family, her entire future, all in the span of a single hour. She looked small in the darkness, but Arlen could feel her resolve, a spike of hard, E3 steel that anchored his own wavering spirit. "We are here," Sable's voice echoed from the darkness ahead. "Sanctum Apex, main access shaft." She stopped at a heavy, circular bulkhead, a relic from a forgotten war, its surface free of any modern interface. "Hale controls the network, but this is analog. It responds only to the old command protocols." She placed her augmented hand on a specific panel. "This is the door I was meant to use," she said, her voice flat. "To deliver you, Arlen." Ironic. "Do it, Sable," Arlen said. With a groan of metal that had not moved in decades, the bulkhead cycled open, revealing not a dark corridor, but a blinding, sterile light. The Sanctum Apex was not a control room. It was a monument to a single ego. It was a circular, glass-walled chamber at the absolute highest pinnacle of the Halcyon spindle. Through the floor-to-ceiling transparent walls, they could see the entire station curving away below them, a galaxy of light. They could see the distant, white, pulsing pillar of the captured Accord Gate, miles below on the auric span. In the center of the room, on a simple, raised pedestal, stood Seraph Hale. He was not the aging, kind scholar from Arlen's memories. He was a man in his mid-30s, his face unlined, his eyes brilliant and assessing. He wore a simple, white uniform, and he was smiling, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked exactly as he had the last time Arlen had seen him, the day before the scourge. Arlen stumbled forward, his breath catching. "Hale." "He is not real," Sable said, her voice tight, her augmented eye scanning him. "His vital signs are impossible. The projection is flawless, but the energy readings. He is a bio-digital hybrid, a living data stream." Hale applauded, a slow, gentle sound. "Full marks. Operative Cade." The original Seraph Hale found the concept of biological decay inefficient, a waste of a great mind. He archived himself, improved upon the code, and integrated with the station's core. "I am not the man who died in the scourge. I am his upgrade." He looked at Arlen, his smile full of paternal warmth. "And you, Arlen, are my upgrade. You brought us here," Arlen said, his voice raw. "Of course," Hale said. "I locked the primary systems, but I left the old wartime routes open. I needed you to come here. I needed this conversation. You brought the brute, Malachar." He gestured to the trembling warden. "How procedural, how very predictable. You believe you are here to confront me, to have your moment of justice." "It is over, Hale," Nixara said, her voice shaking but firm. "We are broadcasting this. The whole spindle will see you. Malachar will confess." Hale laughed. It was a kind, rich sound, and it was the most terrifying thing Arlen had ever heard. "Confess to what, my dear Lady Veleth? That he was a fanatic I used to cleanse my own system, that I orchestrated a crisis to forge a hero, that I manipulated a broken boy into becoming the savior I required." He turned his full attention to Arlen and Nixara. "Or that I manufactured a love story." The words hung in the sterile air. "That piece of paper." "Arlen," Hale said, his voice soft. "The spouse designation. You truly believed that was a clerical error, a charming, cosmic mistake." He smiled. "It was the final step of a 20-year predictive algorithm. I modeled your psychosis after the scourge. I tracked your loneliness, your isolation, your precise psychological type. I modeled Lady Nixara's genetic predisposition for empathic bonding, her ambition to prove herself, her secret doubts about her family's legacy. I threw you two, my two most volatile, perfect variables, into a one-bedroom apartment. I knew the unfortunate proximity, combined with the external threat of the Directorate, would create the exact emotional friction needed to catalyze the ancient, symbiotic bond. It was a design. Arlen. Your rebellion, your heroism, your love. It is my single greatest piece of social engineering." Nixara took an involuntary step back, her hand flying to her mouth. The bond she felt, the choice she had just made. Was it just a line of code? Arlen stared at him, the hollowness inside him complete. His life was not his own. It was a script. "And it worked," Hale continued, his voice glowing with pride. "Beautifully. You are bound. You are tempered. You are my key. And now, Arlen, I will give you your reward." He gestured to the magnificent view of the spindle. "This is a broken, chaotic, self-destructive species. Arlen, they need guidance. They crave order, even if they pretend to despise it. And you will give it to them." "I offer you the post," Hale declared. "Permanent keeper of the Accord Gate. You and your wife. You will be the living symbols of interspecies unity. You will be revered, worships. Your love will be the golden chain that keeps the entire system stable, enforced by the very empathy you unlocked. All you have to do is what you were forged to do. You just have to stand by my side. And agree." The room was silent. Arlen looked at Hale. This perfect, logical monster. He looked at his own blackened, useless arm, the price of Hale's forging. He looked at Nixara, who was watching him, her face pale, her eyes filled with a terrifying, absolute trust. He saw the woman who had renounced her world for him. He felt the bond, the one Hale claimed to have built. It was there. But Hale was wrong. He had built the cage, but he did not understand the nature of what was inside it. "You are right about one thing, Hale," Arlen said, his voice quiet, but resonating with a new, final clarity. "You designed it. You wrote the code. You built the machine." He stepped forward, taking Nixara's hand with his good one. "But you do not own it. You made the match. But we made the choice." He turned from Hale to look out at the spindle, at the millions of flickering lights, the souls he had touched in the stack. "I am not your tool. I am not your keeper. And I am not your hero. I choose the chaos. I choose the community. I choose the people you tried to manage. I reject your design." Hale's smile did not falter, but his eyes went cold. Predictable. The tragic hero, choosing noble oblivion. I was hoping you had evolved past that. Very well. Security. Contain them. Detain the asset, Malachar. This experiment is over. Hale turned, expecting his guards. Nothing happened. The lift door did not open. I have been busy, Sablecade said from the corner. She had been standing by a data port, her back to them. Her data jack plugged in. Now she turned, her augmented eye glowing a soft, analytical gray. You have been monologuing. I have been analyzing. Hale's smile flickered. This hub is isolated, operative. You have no access. You isolated it from the stack, Sable corrected him. You did not isolate it from the emergency broadcast system Kale's team secured, or from the old wartime protocols I was built with. She held up her datapad. You made a critical error, advisor. You believed the E3 texts. You believed the Keeper bloodline, the one you so carefully cultivated, was the only key to the gate. You were wrong. The gate is older than the Keepers, Sable stated, her voice flat. The symbiotic bond is not the real lock. It is just a shortcut, a biological hack. I have been analyzing the gate's fundamental code. The true power source is collective resonance. It does not need a Keeper's blood. It just needs trust, a critical mass of unified social consensus. That is impossible to achieve, Hale snapped, his composure finally breaking. It would require millions of minds to agree on one thing at one time. It is a statistical fantasy. It was, Sable agreed. Until you provided the single, unifying enemy. You gave them a crisis, and Arlen and Nixara gave them a moment of perfect, shared truth. While you were offering Arlen the job, she continued, I was interfacing with the emergency broadcast system. I have just transmitted every piece of data from the vault of ledgers. I have sent Malakar's full, unedited confession, and I have added a new directive of my own. She tapped a final key. I have just sent a citizen's oath to every compad, terminal, and public screen on the spindle. A voluntary pledge, not a command, a choice, to reject systemic control and form a new, interspecies oversight council. All they have to do is agree. On the Auric span, miles below, the cold white pillar of light flickered. Hale spun to the window. No, you cannot. It will destabilize the entire network. They are animals. It will be chaos. The pillar flickered again, turning a pale, hesitant blue. Across the spindle, 5 million people, having seen the evidence, having heard the confession, were reading the oath. They were confused. They were angry. And then, one by one, they began to press agree. It is not enough, Arlen said, his voice hushed. He could feel it in the lattice, a sea of consensus, but it was unfocused. It needs a focal point. It needs us. He turned to Nixara. She was already looking at him, her eyes clear. The algorithm was broken. The design was shattered. All that was left was the choice. He is right, Arlen said. It is not enough. It needs a focus. It needs us. Nixara looked into his eyes, her face luminous with a truth that no algorithm could have ever designed. Not by his paper, she said softly. By our word. He held her gaze, his good hand finding hers. I am Arlen Drake, a repairman, and I choose this. She smiled, her own hand gripping his. I am Nixara Valeth, a diplomat, and I choose you. He leaned in and kissed her. It was not the desperate, fiery merge of the plaza, fueled by adrenaline and fear. It was a quiet, profound, and absolute choice. The bond between them flared, but it was no longer a battery. It was an antenna. It reached out, across the entire spindle, and touched the millions of minds who had just taken the oath. It gathered their consensus, their hope, their unified will, and focused it. On the Auric span, the white pillar of light detonated. It was not an explosion of force. It was an explosion of meaning. A wave of pure, unfiltered, rainbow-colored light The light of 5 million free voices washed over the spindle, over the satellite cities, over the entire system. The Accord Gate was open, fully, freely, a gateway owned by everyone. In the apex, Seraph Hale's projection screamed, dissolving in a torrent of multicolored static. You chose chaos. You chose imperfection. His image vanished. The room was suddenly silent, bathed in the soft, warm glow of the newly freed network. Sable Cade unplugged from the wall. She walked to the main console and activated the broadcaster. "Warden Malachar," she said, her voice echoing across the now silent spindle. "The advisor is gone. The people are listening. Tell them the truth." Kale and the other fighter hauled the warden to the console. He looked at the empty pedestal, at the victorious trio, and at the entire listening galaxy. And, in a broken, hollow voice, the zealot who had lived by fire confessed everything to the world he had tried to burn. The days that followed were chaos, but it was a productive, hopeful chaos. The spindle's command structure was broken, the directive stack, its logic pure but its leadership severed, was dormant. Kale, Sable, and the surviving, uncorrupted members of the diplomatic corps, including the humbled leaders of House Veleth, formed the first Interspecies Oversight Council. They held a public vote. The fate of Seraph Hale, his biodigital core, trapped and isolated in the Sanctum Apex, was a weapon. They could delete him, erase the crime. But Arlen, his voice now one of quiet authority on the new council, argued against it. "He wanted to control history," Arlen said. "If we delete him, we just repeat his mistake." They did not delete him. They archived him. The Sanctum Apex became a museum, and Seraph Hale's living code became its primary exhibit. A permanent, unchanging reminder. A lesson, not to be forgotten, but never to be repeated. Warden Malachar was the first citizen tried by the new Interspecies Tribunal. His public confession, his final, damning act. Weeks later. The small apartment in Residential Sector 7. It was cluttered, but this time with packing boxes. The smell of hot wiring was gone. Arlen, his useless left arm now housed in a simple, black sling, was taking down the last of his diagnostic tools. Nixara was carefully boxing the data pads from her old diplomatic life. "You know," he said, his voice light. "We never did decide who got the bed," Nixara smiled. "I believe the operative claimed it had suboptimal spinal support. So, by default, I think it was mine." He laughed, a real, easy laugh. He picked up a small, flimsy piece of wood he had painted. He hung it on the door, next to the apartment number. It read, "Roommates by accident, partners by choice. In the Undercity, in the cleaned-out bunker that had been Garrison Row." Sable Cade stood before a classroom. It was filled with children, human children, E3 children, augmented children, and hybrids who were a mix of all of them. "Today's lesson," Sable said, her voice flat, but her human eye strangely warm, "is civic responsibility. It is the understanding that you are, all of you, part of a single system. Lesson 2. How to disarm a hostile opponent twice your size. Pay attention." Back in the apartment, Arlen was sorting through the last pile of data slips and junk mail that had accumulated. He found one, an official, cream-colored envelope from the Coalition Housing Authority, its logo already outdated. He opened it. It was a pre-programmed, automated card. A holographic shimmer of flowers bloomed above it, and synthesized music played. "Happy one-year anniversary, Mr. and Mrs. Drake Veleth." It chirped. Nixara, packing the last box, raised a perfect eyebrow. 1 year, their predictive modeling was very optimistic. Arlen looked at the ridiculous, gaudy card. He looked at the woman who had renounced her universe for him. He looked at his own scarred, good hand. He smiled, shutting off the card, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "We will keep it as a souvenir," he said. "But we will choose the rings ourselves." He held out his good hand. She took it. Together, they walked out of the apartment, and for the first time, closed the door on a life that was finally, completely, their own.